Hello, hello. Hello, Mike, and hello to the internet.
Hi.
I'm Tara, and welcome to our DM Deep Dive with D&D in a Castle. Today, I am speaking with Mike Tinney, who has literally just this minute, about a minute before we went live, we announced our dates for spring 2025 D&D in a Castle at Lumley Castle, UK, in March to April. And Mike is going to be running the Chronicle Mode campaign that we'll be running in our spring season. So that has just been announced. You may be learning it for the first time by watching this video, but if you haven't learned it before, now you know, and it's all very exciting. So, Mike, hello and welcome.
Hello. Thank you.
So, Mike, first of all, what is Chronicle Mode? Tell us a little bit about
that. Chronicle Mode is the game that you want to play at D&D in a Castle if you had already planned on coming to both rounds and wanted to have a story that just lasted throughout two kind of co-joined vacation slots. When D&D in a Castle runs, there's usually an A round and a B round, and most of the DMs and the staff are there for both rounds, not always, but most of the time, and a lot of the people that come to play in both. So Chronicle Mode is an epic story format where instead of playing 3 full days of D&D in a campaign, you get the 3 days from both rounds, and it's 6 full days of D&D campaigns.
All right, so it's one epic story told across 2 events of D&D in a Castle, each one being at least 24 hours, so you get a 48-hour minimum game, but I believe that you will be getting more than a 48-hour game. Chronicle Mode generally is minimum 48 hours, but I think Mike Tinney is not a minimum of 48 hours. So talk to us about that.
We've got those session zeros on arrival day. And so the group that stays through absolutely doesn't need to go through the same kind of session zero on week 2 that they do on week 1. So we'll use that as a game slot. And I like to always roll dice and start the story on arrival day as well. So there's basically 2 half days that'll create kind of another full day.
Cool, very cool. And so we're pioneering Chronicle Mode this fall with some pretty special campaigns in October, November of this year. We're launching it for the first time in conjunction with the 50th anniversary of D&D as a sort of celebration of 50 years. And we had a Chronicle Mode that, and we still have it is happening in the fall, that runs through all the major editions of D&D. So you play in a different edition each day. Which was the brainchild of one of our dungeon masters, and was so popular it sold out, and we had to add a second Chronicle Mode to the same event. So we actually have 2 Chronicle Modes running in that event, and the other one is visiting some of the most popular mods and settings from the history of D&D. For your Chronicle Mode, say that again.
Kind of a greatest hits.
Kind of a greatest hits of D&D
and adventures.
Yeah. So tell us about your specific Chronicle Mode, Mike, and what you've got planned for that.
Yeah, so I think what we have in the fall is perfect for the 50th anniversary edition, but I don't think Chronicle Mode as a format is necessarily limited to just a mechanical journey through the history of D&D or a location journey through the various campaign settings that have been around for the last 50 years. So I want to use it to tell a sweeping story that takes the span of a world's lifetime. And the working title for the Chronicle Mode is Immortal, and players will play characters that span hundreds and thousands of years of this world. And these characters will reunite at various moments of consequence in the history of the world to address a problem or a situation I'm just calling them a consequential age. So we'll have 6 different eras. Each era will have kind of its own technology level. The world history will build on itself as we go from day to day. One of the reasons, in addition to it just being suicidal, that I don't want to run Chronicle Mode as a hardcore mode campaign is that 3rd campaign play slot really needs to be used to process the decisions that were done in one era and adapt the following era so that the actions of the players have consequence. and that they are, as they should be, by these immortal, world-shaking people, kind of building the house that they're living in and defining the world either overtly or subtly.
Cool. So for those who are not familiar with our structure of our campaigns at D&D the Castle, every day players will play 2 out of 3 time blocks. So there are 3 time blocks in the day for 4 hours each, morning, afternoon, and evening. And so our campaigns run for 8 hours a day, so they'll take 2 of those blocks. Mike, you have run hardcore mode in the past, which is another gaming mode that we offer, in which you play all 3 every day. So you play 50% more D&D at hardcore mode. So what was that like, running that at D&D in the Castle?
It was great. So I love these new formats because they let you express, both as a DM and a player, the experience of D&D in a different way. So the regular mode at the castle is wonderful. You get to play an awesome campaign, and you get a lot of other interactive opportunities. There's we call them side quests, I guess, where you can go and do archery, or sometimes axe throwing, or an escape room, or a one-shot D&D game with a guest DM, or whatever. But the hardcore mode game is just, you're all in. You are there to play this campaign, and I was pleased and privileged to have the opportunity to run the first hardcore mode campaign, and we just wanted to see where the ends of the limits were. So we played 9 a.m. to midnight every day, and we ate our meals together and talked about the campaign. It was just, I think we ended up clocking 50 to 53 hours of game time across the 3.5 days. And it was great, but it was it's endurance D&D in some ways. Like you're in it, and that's all you do. But you can tell a grand story that way too. Like a really epic and consequential game experience happens in that format. Yeah.
And let me ask you, you've been playing and running D&D for some time as a DM and a player. Oh, hi, Scott Campbell, who's dropped in to say hello. Tell me about the kinds of games you've run in the past. Like, how did you come to D&D, and how did you come to DMing?
Well, I'm from the Stranger Things generation, so I think I rolled my first die in the late 70s. And by the time I was in high school in the 80s, there was a group of kids, just like in Stranger Things, that all played D&D or other games together. And it was always hard to find dungeon masters. So some of us there was like a certain subset of us were just like, okay, well, I'll do that. And so I was one of the people that was willing to run games, and I had another friend that did, and we would take turns so we could both still play. But then over the years, I loved it. I ended up, as a lot of people do, graduating high school and going into the real world, and had a couple years as in a day job. And then I got lucky enough to get hired by a company called White Wolf, and making games became my job. And so that was 93. And I started developing games for White Wolf for a couple of years, and then moved out of the game side of things and into the business side of the company.
Cool. And you originally came to D&D in the Castle as a guest. Is that
I
right?
did. Yeah, I came in stealth mode in 2019 and checked it out because I was fascinated by it. It was a new way. Like, I left the hobby in 2012 to start a company in health, basically health gaming. And in that absence, this kind of online content creator that was independent of the publisher, the power of social media, it created a new kind of job in the role-playing game industry, where you could be a very successful freelance content creator or influencer, however you want to self-identify there. And then there were these events springing up, this one being the biggest one of them, where you could go on a really nice vacation and have that kind of quality game experience with one of these people that emerged and became a kind of a self-starter and created their own, kind of a independent identity as a game creator. So yeah, I checked it out, and it was great. It was well run. The castle grounds were beautiful, and the whole thing was really well put together.
Cool. And So being a Stranger Things kid, were you a sort of all weekend, like a 72 hours straight gaming kind
Yeah,
of?
I grew up in a kind of a strange house. My stepfather was a black belt in karate, and so he had aspired to start and open a karate studio. So by the time I was 10, he did that. But the building he bought for it was a church.
Hmm.
So the first floor of the church was our house, like it was basically an apartment built on the first floor of the church with walls and bathrooms and kitchens and stuff. The second floor of the church, where people used to worship, still with a bunch of stained glass windows, was the karate studio where you would go and train. And there were weekends where he just didn't have classes. And so we would roll up in there with our sleeping bags and the gaming table and just take over the space and roll dice and play all weekend and, eat pretzels and soda, drink soda and stuff like that. Many times we have epic long weekend games.
That's amazing. And you've also been running the event side of or hosting the D&D weekends for D&D in a Castle as well. So is that similar to your past experience?
Yeah, but more adult. Like I would liken it to the chef's table at a restaurant, but at a lake house. So you're not going to a big event. You're going to a single table experience. You're hanging out with the dungeon master that you've chosen. You sign up to play with a specific dungeon master announced. So Mark Meir and B. Dave have done a handful of them. Alquin was out earlier this year. I think Jason Azevedo is next in September. And then I play the role of host. So the DM and I kind of work together to facilitate the event, and you get to eat my tacos. And if you bring adult beverages, I'll mix you a drink behind the bar and stuff like that. But yes, just kind of a more informal, personalized experience. And everybody, it takes about 30 minutes to 90 minutes. And then everybody's fast friends because we all have this cool hobby in common and lots of common references.
Somebody says D&D Weekends is amazing. Mike is a fabulous host. A gem of a human. Mike, a gem of a human. How lovely. How does it, I just want to ask the setting of being in the castle in an all-exclusive kind of, everything's taken care of, not all-exclusive, all-inclusive is what I'm trying to say. All-inclusive vacation setting where the meals are taken care of, you stay on site, your group is all there, you're DMing within this immersive environment. How does that affect the game that you run?
Positively. And I think you're kind of selling your staff a little short, Tara, because the staff goes above and beyond to really facilitate what the DMs are trying to do. So there's a chat on WhatsApp where you can just ask for anything. And 5 to 15 minutes later, somebody is bringing it to you in your room. So you need an ogre, you forgot to grab the ogre. Hey, I need an ogre, and it comes. You're out of coffee, coffee comes. And so really the entire atmosphere of the event and the design of the experience is such that the game is the most important thing, and the dungeon master and players have top attention priority of the D&D and Castle staff, and then that over the years has become imprinted on most of the host castle staff as well, the people that actually work at and run the castle. Like they're used to this group now, and I think this is their favorite group because nobody's getting drunk and throwing bottles across the room or trying to steal stuff or anything like that. It's a well-behaved group that's there to have a great time playing games.
Yeah, I think we are their favorite. I would agree. We're all very nice. Everybody's very nice at D&D in the Castle.
I mean, of course they'll say that because they say that like every customer is their favorite customer when their customer asks. But we have heard them complain about other customers in ways that about behaviors that we don't have. So
yeah, a certain relief when it's us. They like to see us, and we're a lot of fun for them. Tell me about your style as a DM. What excites you about D&D and about the opportunity to have this format of a game? What do you want to bring to the castle?
Yeah, I would. So I'm a little bit of a mad scientist in that I entered the hobby as a game designer, so I love to tinker with the rules mechanics, and like the D&D 5th edition action economy is one I love to kind of create decision mechanics around. You know, you have a standard action, you have a move, and you have a bonus action and a reaction. And how can you take the economy of those actions and create tension that is narratively driven, but supported by the mechanics in the game? And the other half of that, or the other side of that coin, for me philosophically, is a bit of a jazz mentality. Like if you've ever been at an open jazz session where musicians kind of rotate in and they're all just playing, I really feel like the DM is maybe setting up the baseline of the game, and then you'll have whatever plans you have. But I am most delighted when I'm surprised by player decisions and the game and the story is changed because of it. So I think it's an art form that is an entertainment type or category that's extremely collaborative and highly emergent. And I really enjoy that. I try to lean into it while still, being aware of the timeline and making sure that the game doesn't get stuck in a rut or a corner, or, if the players are debating over a course of action, if it's a really good RP scene, that can run for sometimes as long as it needs to run for. But if they run out of steam and don't know what to do, it's my job to kind of put some breadcrumbs down so the game can keep moving.
Cool. And Patrick has dropped in to say, had the privilege to play with Mike as a player last April and had a blast. My question is, how different is your preparation when you're DMing an intense game like hardcore versus your typical game? Or even this could apply not necessarily to hardcore, but to this type of setting where there's a beginning, middle, and end,
Sure.
as opposed to an ongoing campaign, your home game.
So I don't commit to running month-over-month campaigns. My schedule just doesn't accommodate it. But like, I'll run a one-shot game. Like, this lake house that we play D&D weekends at is my lake house, and so my family's there, and we'll sometimes be out there with guests, and I'll run a game there. If it's a pickup game, I usually, my prep is on like a sheet of paper. It's really lightweight. It's a couple plot points and maybe some notes on, what sorts of headwinds the party will face, and then I try to run it in an emergent sense where I'm asking the players questions that fill in the backstory or the story thus far, or what they're going to do next. And philosophically, I think in those cases, I don't have to know how the adventure gets resolved. Like, my job is to create the problem, and then the players' entertainment experience is to discover together the solution to that problem. But the hardcore mode game I ran was very different. I had a huge amount of prep, and each session was architected, to a scale of like 5x what I would normally do. And I think because I have this kind of mentality, I think I did about 60 hours of prep for the first hardcore mode game I ran, between the campaign, get backgrounds, characters, the mechanics for kingdom building and inheritance and stuff like that, because that was the hardcore mode style that I ran. And then also I did a bunch of unique miniatures for the game and stuff like that. So it was a delightful journey to prepare for that.
Cool. And somebody's asked a question specifically about hardcore mode, which you have run in the past, that says, do you require multiple characters, or can you stick to one or two? And
yeah,
I'll let you answer that.
Yeah, it's totally dependent on the game. Like, some hardcore mode games, the one Beth is running at one of the US castles this summer, everybody just has one character, and you're a fallen dreadlord from one of the dread domains in Ravenloft, and you have like this backstory that is kind of tragic, and then you were evil, and then you were deposed, and so that's just one character. In Alcuin's game, it was kind of a tale of two cities, where you had a character in each of these two rival cities, and the camera hopped between the two, and the characters got closer and closer to the final confrontation. And then as you get to the final confrontation, you were playing two level 17 characters in what was probably a 6-hour final boss combat, and it was epic and also hardcore. In my first hardcore game, you played, each day was a different generation. So you played the grandparents, parents, and grandkids. In my second hardcore mode, it was just one long 80-year campaign, and you played the character from ages 20 to 80. And the character just kind of went through life. So it depends on the DM, but that's one of the reasons I think that the hardcore mode campaign and what game you're playing is what we lead with on the website, where you can look and you can read what that campaign is going to be and get a feel for how it's going to work and what it's going to be like, as opposed to a regular campaign where it's one of our awesome DMs, and you can look them up if you don't already know them and kind of see what their style is like and know that you're going to get whatever their specialty and flavor of DMing is.
Yeah, and I would say if you're interested in hardcore mode, you can go to our website, dndinacastle.com/hardcore, and it will list the various campaigns that are coming up. There's also the one this August with Dave Bryant from Nerdarchy, and his is also, you play one player, one character, and then also in the fall with Thor Nye, who is running a sort of Viking-themed low fantasy time-skipping adventure that sounds also very cool, and that I believe is also a single-character game. But you can see those all at dndinacastle.com/hardcore. And if you're interested in Chronicle mode, which is, as we discussed at the beginning, one adventure across 2 D&D in a Castle events back-to-back, so you register for both. And when you opt into that campaign, basically, you pay an upgrade, which covers the time between, so that you're covered for accommodations and meals in one great long adventure escape from reality to a castle and to the multiverse of D&D. So those are the different events. But Mike, tell me a bit about the setting, and in terms of how much you can reveal. And I know you've planned this out a bit. The setting of your Chronicle mode campaign, what's that about, and how did you come up with that?
It's 3/4 of a year away, so I haven't really defined the world, but I started to work on the ages of the world. And without giving too much away, I think session 1 is, my working title is either Age of Legends or Age of Heroes. Think like the era of myth. And then it's going to ground down into something a little bit more like the Dark Ages, and then start to move up from there. But I don't want to give too much away. And part of my process is also just very iterative. So I'll just continue to kind of nibble at the edges of this thing, and it'll come into focus for me as the months go on. And then at some point, I'll try to stop developing it, meet the players, hear what types of characters they want to play and what their approach is, and then try to add some of those ingredients into the campaign as well, because it's it should be collaborative. At least the way I like to do it, I like it to be collaborative.
And as a DM or as a player at your table, what kind of game can people expect? Like, regardless of how the specific campaign evolves, and there are player choices and things that get incorporated, of the pillars, which one do you enjoy? You've talked about, you really like the mechanics and really playing with those. Who would really enjoy Mike Tinney's gaming experience, and what would they like about it?
I don't know, I'm kind of nervously glancing at the chat bar here because I know there's some people that have interacted with me. I'm not really sure. So I'm not a public-facing DM. I'm an industry game designer who has been involved professionally with games, but I don't have a big social media presence or anything like that. So I think you have to be okay with a little experimentation when it comes to rules and mechanics, and in that you have to be okay for me to, no idea survives contact with reality. So there have been times when I went out with a mechanic and I was like, you know what? This isn't really feeling the way I thought it would when I wrote it down. So we're going to change it now and tack a little bit to the left or the right or whatever on it. I like to give people moral quandaries. I like to paint in shades of gray. You'll rarely meet somebody who is irrevocably evil or undeniably good. Like I like a little bit more of a reality-based morality sort of environment. One of the sessions I ran in my hardcore mode game was entirely diplomatic. Like the characters could unsheathe their swords and go to work, but they didn't, and it could be solved through negotiation and role play and stuff like that. But I do also really like combat and tactical combat that is, the game has mechanics for it, and you have 30 feet of movement for a reason, and other people have 40 feet for a reason, and it kind of wastes that character's advantage if you don't create opportunities for them to have it. Another pet peeve I have is a lot of DMs don't use short rests, but there are mechanics around it. And if you don't give a party a chance to use short rests, then your fighters and your warlocks are a little nerfed with what they should be able to do. So I try to kind of take a look at all of that. And when I do a hardcore mode game, and it'll probably be the same in Chronicle, I try to give sessions that lean into these different things. So in my hardcore mode, there was an RP session. There were 2 RP sessions across the 10 sessions of hardcore. But then there was a couple big boss fights. And then there was a fight where the party had to race up a mountainside in difficult terrain, fighting a horde of 20 drakes. So there's a lot of masked miniatures moving around on the field and a lot of, area of effect stuff going on. And so I try to kind of try to take every session and think, okay, what is the archetypical D&D experience? And then how do I make a version of that that's true to the story, aligns with what I think the players are looking for based on my conversation so far. And so, you can expect, I guess, in my games, a little bit of a tour of different elements of D&D, each kind of being brought to the fore in a different adventure. And I try to make my sessions kind of a complete adventure. So you play 2 sessions a day. That first session, I'm going to try to end it and then have the second session start up and both be fairly complete. That's not always possible. Sometimes we'll stretch across and we'll, rock Peter to pay Paul and stuff like that, because stories tell themselves and take over sometimes.
Do you, are you a crafty guy, Mike? Do you like to have lots of like crafted stuff on your table, or do you like to work with a lot of terrain and physical stuff, or are you more of a theater of the mind guy? What's your kind of approach that way?
I guess I would say I'm a centerpiece guy. So I will, like, so I built a throne of bones for one of the scenes in my hardcore mode game that the mummy was standing on, and it had environmental effects, and it was kind of a layer, in the game mechanically. Then I just picked up whatever proxy skeletons I could pick up because they weren't the centerpiece of the scene. So I guess I'm a little bit of a blend. Not everything has to be perfect, but the things that are most important, I try to give those extra attention.
Yeah, and I just want to bring up the big boss battle at your hardcore mode with the multiple heads of Tiamat. Can you tell us a bit what you did there? Because that was a bit of a moment.
Yeah, and I apologize. I work from home, and we have a dog, so you might hear her interacting with the mailman. But so one of the issues I have, and D&D tried to solve this with legendary actions, but a level 20 group can really dogpile just about anything because they have, I was talking about action economy before, they have 6 standard actions, 6 bonus actions, 6 reactions, if it's a party of 6, and then lots of characters have ways to make, more things happen, more bang for the buck for each of those types of actions. So I rebuilt Tiamat with each head being kind of its own entity, and then therefore having its own action economy. And then I went ahead and made it an adventuring party. So one of the head has lots of fightery powers, another one rogue powers, bard powers. So you can get in a counterspell duel with this particular Tiamat. And then for the hardcore mode game that I ran in the fall, I think Scott mentioned this in the chat. I had a bunch of DMs come in and each of them played a head, and I had to actually mute them down because they were just tearing up the scenery and going berserk, and the players were holding their heads and they couldn't concentrate, and all the Tiamat heads were yelling and snarling. And so for the first 10 minutes, it really delivered the emotional kind of chaos that I was looking for. But then I had to be like, okay, quiet on the set. We got to go in action order now. But yeah, it's fun. That Tiamat is a beast. Like I have every time I've run that Tiamat, I've done it in the form of a legacy campaign where the campaign has had, you know, multiple sessions to build up to that conflict and generate additional resources for themselves. So it's not just the adventuring party, but it's a bunch of different add-ons that they've unlocked throughout the course of the story.
Yeah, I feel like that kind of experience with, you know, each head of Tiamat being played by a different dungeon master of their own renown. I mean, that's the kind of thing you can only really get at D&D in a Castle that I know of, or in that kind of setting.
GM Tim absolutely stole the show as the red dragon head of Tiamat. It's like screaming at everyone, like the other heads and the enemies, and just trouncing up and down across the room, and just so high energy. It was great. And then, yeah, everybody, like Scott came in and was a really, you know, vicious. I think he played the black dragon head of Tiamat, or maybe the blue one. I don't know. Maybe Scott will type it in to the chat if he remembers. But yeah, it was a great ensemble, and a little bit of a last minute, oh, I wonder if these guys would be up for this. And they were, and it worked out great.
That's cool. Yeah, things often happen on the fly at the castle as things develop. And opportunity is there, and things emerge that are, you know, we didn't anticipate. That happens all the time at D&D in a Castle. So we're closing in on the end of our time here today, Mike. But I want to ask you, what are you looking forward to the most about D&D in a Castle next spring? As is on the screen, March 24th to 28th and March 30th to April 3rd. You can come for either of those. If you come to both, you have the option of playing in our Chronicle Mode campaign with Mike to play one long adventure across both of those events. So what are you looking forward to about this event and your campaign at it?
I mean, I think right now it's the campaign. The event's too far out. We have other D&D in a Castle events that I'll be adjacent to in various ways. But I think I mentioned earlier that, you know, I went in early in my career as a game designer at White Wolf, and White Wolf was a game company that emerged in the 90s and created this game called Vampire the Masquerade, where you played this immortal character. But most of the stories were set in modern age. I'm really looking forward to telling the type of story with players that spans 1,000 years, and experimenting with, you know, the kind of the layers of history that our world has. You know, you look back 2,000-3,000 years, and, you know, a lot of stuff went down in this world, and the modern age has just this little echo of that you get to see. But in the Immortal Chronicle mode, I think we get an opportunity to tell a world story where the world is kind of the seventh character at the table, and the party is in some ways running the game for the world, and I'm running the game for the party. And I'm, you know, this far out, it's more of an emotional kernel that I'm feeling when I think about telling a story like that, and I think about these different touch points and broad beats. But, you know, coming back to a place 500 years later that, you know, one of your closest friends died at 2 sessions ago, can happen and should be a real and momentous thing. And we have an opportunity to tell stories like that in this format that, you know, other games just, you know, they have their own momentous opportunities. But I'm really excited about having this kind of approach to these layers of history, and, you know, long plots that take place where, you know, you see something in session 4 that suddenly makes this thing from session 2 make a lot more sense. Yeah, so that is what I'm looking forward to most. And I have yet to get a group of players that weren't completely awesome to game with, and didn't inspire me to work my butt off behind the scenes to tell, with them the best story we could tell together. So
Yeah.
I'm hoping that that's going to be like that again.
Yeah, I have to say to potential players, when you game in Mike's game, you get a lot of work from Mike. What I mean is, Mike puts a lot into his games. Well, no, I've seen the execution, and I've seen it firsthand in the previous games that Mike has run at D&D and Castle.
I thought you were saying that they get to do a lot of
work. Oh, no, they get your
There's
work.
Some homework sometimes, but if you don't do your homework, I'll just phone it in for you, and you'll get
you get the benefit of Mike's hard work. You get a lot of hard work by Mike going into your game. That's what I'm trying to say. So yes, if you want to check out more about our upcoming events or learn about Chronicle Mode itself, you can head over to dndinacastle.com or find us on socials at dndinacastle. And on the website, there is a live chat feature if you want to ask questions and get answers. You can also set up a phone call with us, and we can call you, no obligations, to talk you through what your options are at D&D in a Castle and get you into an amazing vacation. So, and those are real life people that are behind those chats. I like to reiterate that because we're there, and we're the ones typing and chatting, and we can give you a call if you need. So thank you so much, Mike, for joining us and for setting up this Chronicle Mode next spring. And we look forward to seeing you there, and we look forward to seeing everybody else at the castle.
Okay. Thanks. Can't wait to do it. I'm excited to run this game. I don't have another way to run this game. So it's a marriage of convenience, and I'm super excited to have the chance to tell a story in this long form format.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. Take care, everybody.